Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, November 11th. And today I've picked out one theme that I'd really like to get under. It's been in the news in several news sources. So I have the Globe and Mail here. I have CTV. I saw it was on CBC as well, but I figured no need to dig in and read every news source. But Bill C5, I'm sure everybody's heard of it. Obviously, the Liberal government is pushing quite hard to get it installed. It's funny because this actually kind of ties into the first video I did regarding Canada's energy potentials, natural resource potentials. I had a whole map of potential export routes, through the north into Europe, and then through the Pacific, obviously into Asian markets like Japan and South Korea, because obviously Trump has just signed a bunch of agreements, energy agreements, LNG with both Japan and South Korea. Obviously, India is another big factor in there. India has been making a lot of money in Asia, buying Russian oil for cheap, refining it. Obviously, India doesn't have its own oil, but they've basically become oil refiners, and they've been exporting that oil to Europe at a premium because Europe is pretty fucking screwed right now, but it's all good. This article by the Globe and Mail, LNG Canada project underlines change in public opinion on energy sector, Champagne says. So Champagne is the finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne. So he said this on November 5th. He said, the expansion of LNG Canada liquefied natural gas export terminal in BC is a game changer for Canada, which is funny because we had this whole article last Friday saying how BC and Alberta are in a spat. But let's see what he says. He says the second phase of LNG Canada is a game changer for Canada and underscores how attitudes to energy have changed in recent months. The federal finance minister says, François-Philippe Champagne said Monday that Canadians today understand the nexus between economic security, energy security, and national security. A vast change from the general view across the country 6 or 9 months ago. I think there's more openness to an energy corridor than before, Mr. Champagne told an afternoon Calgary Chamber of Commerce. So I think people understand the natural resources sector is key to national prosperity, to investment in the country, to who we are as Canadians in many ways. And this is pretty important here. Take LNG, a liquefied natural gas export terminal in Kitimat, BC. He said that the facility's co-owners are expected to make final investment decision in 2026 to forge ahead with phase 2 expansion. So this is all pretty interesting because obviously we just had a spat about a oil corridor going through the north. The LNG corridor goes south towards Vancouver. So this one's already okayed, right? So there's no aboriginal qualms on whether this is green or not, or whether it's going through 5,000 kilometers of aboriginal territory coastline. LNG is okay. So they're they're planning on making a second corridor that's going to be connecting down. Actually, maybe let me Kitimat to Kitimat corridor. Let's go Kitimat natural gas corridor. Just so you guys have a view, images. See if we can pull something up here. Yeah, here we go. So this is what they're doing right now. Let's see if we can make this bigger. Yes, we can. All right. So that's basically the corridor that's envisioned to happen. Just wanted to show you guys, kind of get a visual on what we're talking about here. See if there's a zoomed out. This might be it. Yeah. So this is, let's open it up a bit more. So this is the corridor that, oh, come on, guys. This is the corridor that they're planning. Jesus Christ. Oh, God. All right, never mind. You guys get the gist. So there's a southern one, the LNG corridor that's supposed to happen. The big fuss was about a oil corridor that was supposed to go north, and the Aboriginals are complaining that they think that their livelihood, that the natural environment is going to die because of an oil pipeline. What's key in this whole statement here is that all of a sudden energy is a game changer, but it wasn't 6 to 9 months ago, right? So the same government, the Liberals, didn't consider energy a game changer. But probably, to be honest, because we've had the same problem for decades. We've had the same problem in perpetuity forever. No government has really ever considered energy a game changer in Canada. But we're a natural resource rich country. This is what we have. We have natural resources. Every country that is a natural resource rich country is filthy rich. And they're known for these things. And you go to those countries to buy those resources. Russia, they have honestly they have a bunch of stuff. They have diamonds as well. They have steel, they have a lot of metals, they have oil, they have natural gas. And they've made their industry, their base industry from this, and they've built up other industries, manufacturing industries. China is known for rare earths. What do you need rare earths for? You need rare earths for the production of microchips. And they basically own the mineral table. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like which country owns the most, from the mineral table. It's basically 90% Chinese, right? Saudi Arabia, known for all the Gulf states, are known for oil, but they're all really rich because of that same oil. Their citizens live really well because of all of that oil, right? And so this is something that Canada could be doing. It's not really doing it though, right? Why aren't we doing it? It's because we're just selling everything south. I have nothing against trading with the U.S. Far from it. I love the U.S. But we're not capitalizing on what we have, right? We're trying to be an economy, a service sector economy. We're trying to be something that we shouldn't be, essentially. And because of that, we have all of these problems, right? We have these problems, that's one reason why we have these problems. But the other reason is a little deeper as well. So now we're all okay with the energy corridor, and it's apparently a nexus between economic security, energy security, and national security. Isn't that great? National security as well. And I find it funny that it took, and like I said in the last episode, in the last episode, yesterday's episode that I did, the article around Mark Carney's defense budget, there's a big plan to increase defense and all of that. One way that you can actually finance proper military spending, if it's thought through well, military manufacturing. Canada doesn't really have its own military manufacturing complex, which we should have. We could at least be making our own submarines, whatever. We have our own nuclear energy. We have everything that we need to be self-sufficient somewhere, right? And we're not really doing it, right? But all of that can be funded through things like advanced natural resource manufacturing, processing. That goes with oil, but Canada has other things as well. And so just to tie into this a little bit more again, just so you guys know what Bill C5 really enacts. So they call it the Building Canada Act, right? And it's supposed to enable the government of Canada to move forward on consultations required under the Act. So the provinces, territories, Indigenous rights holders are able to determine the list of national interest projects. So it gets weighed between the to strengthen Canada's autonomy, resilience, and security, provide economic or other benefits to Canada, have a high likelihood of successful execution, advance the interests of Indigenous peoples. Honestly, I find this a little funny. Advancing the interest of Indigenous peoples. I don't know, if Indigenous peoples have the right to veto project of national interest because it runs through their territory. I don't really know how we're supposed to be advancing their interest, to be honest. But Canada's kind of tied itself in 1982 by having an act regarding the protection of Indigenous rights. Oh, it's actually right here. Ha! Canada is committed to respecting the rights of Indigenous peoples recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution Act in 1982. So there you go. So that's what Bill C5. It's supposed to be a facilitator for government national works, right? And so here's an add-on to the original to this LNG over here. So Politics Insider Carney says new round of major projects bound for fast track consideration to be named on Thursday. So they're naming a bunch of projects that they want to fast track, and it's supported by Bill C5. So Prime Minister Mark Carney says the second round of projects to be referred to the Major Projects Office will be announced Thursday in Prince Rupert, BC. The office was established this summer to fast track the approval of what the government calls nation-building infrastructure and resource projects. Tying back into what I already said previously. So, and I think it's an interesting timing because right now what we've been seeing a lot of in the news is Alberta dispute with BC, Alberta dispute with the federal government, with Ottawa, Saskatchewan arguing with the federal government in Ottawa because obviously Saskatchewan also has some oil that it also sends south. It's not just a wheat producer and barley producer and all of that. So these governments are already there's already some kind of going back and forth between the provincial governments and the federal government. And the timing is super interesting with why all of a sudden energy projects are considered nation building, right? So obviously there is, I don't know if you guys heard, but there's these big potential movements of provincial independence movements with Alberta and potentially Saskatchewan, because they feel that they're providing all of this additional money to the federal government, and the federal government really isn't giving anything back, right? It's not helping them expand their economies by selling oil and gas elsewhere and really developing all of that up. And to be honest, it's not even we should be doing it because we should be moving populations, at least newcomers, westward. Really, work those western provinces more, help build more jobs over there. Kind of give a little bit more of a flat playing field, across the country with the demographics, because you have like 50% of the populations living in Southern Ontario. It's crazy. And obviously Ontario is a big province, so it's like it is kind of sustainable, but it shouldn't be that way, right? We should be kind of flatlining everywhere. And so the first five were referred to the office for consideration in September. They included an expansion of LNG Canada export terminal in British Columbia and support for small modular nuclear reactors in Ontario. So this is obviously, like I said, we have a lot of uranium. We have our own nuclear technology. We have a lot of things that we can use to our own advantage. And really build up our economy the way an economy should be built up, right? And I just want to jump over here. We have some energy facts, just to tie into all of this. So this is energyinformationcanada.ca, as you can see. So some key facts here. Globally, Canada is a leader in oil and gas production, being the fourth largest producer of crude oil and the fifth largest producer of natural gas. So these are like raw materials though, right? This isn't anything to do with refining. 97% of Canada's proven oil reserves are located in the oil sands. That's fine. Greenhouse gas emissions per barrel of oil. Honestly, who cares? Honestly, who cares? None of the Gulf states care about the greenhouse gas emissions per barrel of oil produced. None of them. We're literally shooting ourselves foot actively, giving us a competitive disadvantage in the global market. No one cares about this in the world, right? and we're probably taxing ourselves. I'm pretty sure we are. Canadian refineries can process nearly 1.9 million barrels of crude oil per day. I'm sure that this could be at least tripled. It wouldn't surprise me. For the fourth largest producer of crude oil, this can 100% be drastically increased. In Canada's coal production in 2023 was 47 million tons. All right. So, these are some pretty high level stats right now regarding, Canada's energy mix. What I had here a pretty this is also very interesting. So this is a report, economic strategy tables, done by the ISEDC. But check this out. So Canada ranks 34th out of 35 the OECD countries in the average time to get regulatory approval for a construction project. Infrastructure bottlenecks are preventing access to existing and new markets as well as many resource deposits. So not only are we not producing as much as we can and refining our own products, we actually have red tape bottlenecks that are stopping us from doing this the right way. That is insane. That is insane. And that type of stuff is only going to increase, and it's all because of green initiatives, right? We wanna be producing green energy, but to produce the technology that's needed to produce solar energy, for instance, you need dirty production, and we're giving ourselves red tape because of some kind of ESG stuff. Now look at this. So Canada is the world's 10th largest producer of copper, a metal required for solar panels, smart grids, wind turbines, LED light bulbs, and all of that. You think there's any red tape behind this? Come on, it's crazy. This is also I wanted to share this with you as well. So this is a pretty interesting graph. So nearly 55,000 jobs attributed to critical mineral production. So Canada's actually is actually employing a lot of its citizens in the natural gas resource, mineral sectors. But this is all crude extraction. This is all raw mineral extraction, right? Potash, we're one of the biggest producers in the world. We have a lot of our exports for potash are almost exclusively, Canadian. Total mining sector, natural resources, largest nominal GDP values in 23, potash 9.9 billion, providers critical metals, aluminum, the top 3 contributors critical metals. Yeah. So these are actually relative, and you would look at this and you'd say, but these are small. These are small numbers, relative to Canada's economy. It's like a $1 trillion economy. Plus, this is kind of small. It isn't, because this is a strong base. This is from selling raw materials, right? This isn't like being refined. If we actually had refinement facilities for our oil, for our gas, and this and that, these numbers would triple. They would treble. They might even quadruple, right? It's always more profitable to sell a finished product, than to go about things this way. Here we go. This is good. So this is the CFIB, Research Economic Analysis for National Infrastructure. So recent data makes the urgency clear. According to the World Bank's findings, Canada ranks near the bottom, 64th out of 187 countries in terms of ease of dealing with construction permits. So tying back to the other one, it is placing it in the bottom 20 percentile globally. Like, how are we, supposed to make use of what we have if we have these red tape bottlenecks, these bureaucracies that exist? I guess it's ridiculous. So here's another one. So in 2024, 3 critical mineral processing sites were in construction and 1 started production. So we have none. So this just goes to show how dependent we are on just selling the basic crude raw materials that we have, right? But I want to go to this. So the CDV also did a quick They did an article as well. They had a roundtable. It's pretty interesting.
Prime Minister Mark Carney promised to, quote, build, baby, build, and he's now made his first moves to meet that pledge, selecting 5 projects for fast track from his newly minted Major Projects Office and earmarking others for further study. Has he met the mark he set for himself, that being nation-building enterprises to counteract the economic hurt of Trump's second term? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Former BC Premier Christy Clark is here. She's a senior advisor with Bennett Jones. Marco Mendicino is former Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Mark Carney and a former Liberal cabinet minister. Former Conservative Industry Minister James Moore is with us. He's now a policy advisor at Edelman. And former Federal Conservative Cabinet Minister and MP Monty Solberg is here as well. He's the CEO of New West Public Affairs. Hi, everybody. Hello. Great to see you, James.
So what did she just say here? She just said, let's talk about the economic policies, these energy policies that the Liberal Mark Carney government's about to are trying to implement through C5. And these major construction projects, these major infrastructure projects that they want to push through. Why? Because of the hurt of tariffs from the U.S. government because of Trump's second term. So they want to. So it's always finger pointing. It's always finger pointing. They're blaming Trump for Canada's economic heartaches. It's not our fault, guys. It's big bad. Trump came. He put these tariffs on. Meanwhile, the country is basically collapsing under Trudeau. We had just terrible. It was a catastrophe of policies that were going on under Justin Trudeau. But Trump is the problem. It's not that our economy isn't diversified and that we're not building proper manufacturing facilities and all of that. No. Trump's the problem. He pulled out our auto jobs. All the American companies that were producing vehicles in Canada and parts. Cool, guys. Why don't we have our own? It's always finger pointing. It's never our problem. But I mean, it's good that we're trying to do something about it, even if it's reactionary, because obviously, that's usually, it's usually the wrong time to do it, but it's better to do it sometimes than never, right?
James, I'll start with you. Wondering, the government is really positioning this as something with enormous promise. The opposition is positioning this as something very vacuous. Where does your analysis fall in that spectrum?
I thought generally today was a good day. I like the way that Don Farrell started the press conference by saying one project, one review for a decision to be made in 1 year and a project to be completed in 2 years. That's a great slogan. It's a great North Star to be focused on for at least these 5 projects. I kind of wonder why that isn't kind of a system-wide approach to all government procurement and infrastructure build. But I think, the Prime Minister stood there for an hour. And what was clear to me was one thing, is that this is a Prime Minister who is owning these 5 projects. And he says there's going to be another tranche coming in November by the time of the Grey Cup. So, traditionally governments, say that, we're the referees of a process, and the process hopefully results in good outcomes and proponents can come forward, but we kind of are hands off. This is the first time in a long time I've seen a Prime Minister actually say, these specific 5 projects, I want them done. I want to get to yes. I'm going to take ownership. And if they succeed or fail, that's a symbol of whether or not I've succeeded or failed as a Prime Minister. There's a high risk in that politically, but I kind of like the accountability. I like the owning the responsibility. I like the drive to get to yes. I'm concerned about some.
This is what everybody should be doing. We need to have checks and balances, right? This is where accountability comes from. This is where trust building happens, right? You say, I'm going to do this. It's the yes, it's the say do ratio. You say, I'm going to do this. You're going to judge me by my outcomes, right? If I keep saying things that I'm going to do and nothing happens, you get Justin Trudeau. What happened? We had nothing. Nothing really positive actually came out of Justin Trudeau. And he was in power for like a decade. That's insane. More than a decade. It's insane. The level of garbage that we've allowed ourselves to live with. The lack of checks and balances. What I find interesting here, though, is that this guy is a former conservative leader who's obviously talking quite openly about a liberal government now. Kind of goes to show that they're all kind of a part of the same spectrum. They're just kind of pushing for power, essentially. But let's keep it going.
some of the projects that were not on the list. We'll see what happens in the second tranche. But I'm more with Danielle Smith in the sense of I think this is a good step forward, good progress. We'll see what the next round looks like.
Marco, can you weigh in on the political risk that James referenced? Like, it seems to be to me to be enormous, just given the context of the past number of years, the difficulties projects have had going forward. To say like, and I know these ones are closer to a yes than other ones that could have been selected, but still, it's a lot of ownership and, in my view, political risk. In your view, how much political risk is there?
Sure, I think some risk anytime the Prime Minister takes a podium and says, I want these 5 projects done. And by the way, when you take a look at the play-by portfolio, you're talking about big investments to expand LNG. There's a nuclear SMR play. There's a copper play. There's an exporting through terminal capacity play. So for sure, there's some risk. But I would argue that there's an even greater risk in not proceeding forward and being explicit about the expectations of the government to get big things done.
Yeah, so you guys know what this is. This is the Liberal government. Carney is fully cognizant that the Liberal Party is walking a tightrope because of Justin Trudeau and all of the lack of everything that he has not done, over the last X amount of years. And so they're pushing to get actual things done quickly, while he's in power, so that he can obviously extend his further terms. It's actually more politically risky. They talk about political risk here a lot, but it's actually more politically risky for Mark Carney to not do anything and act like Justin Trudeau did than for him to actually take on these large infrastructure projects. And obviously he's met up with Donald Trump quite a number of times already. And Poilievre, he'd just jump on the opportunity for the Liberals not to do anything, right? So this is, the Liberals are actually kind of forced to be pedantic, right? And to move quickly because we've had literally a decade of nothing. So when they talk about political risk, they're moving because of political risk, right? So you need to kind of flip the script on this.
And so by passing Bill C-5 last June, what the government has done, it has set the conditions and signaled to the market that we can and should build big things in this country so that we can be an energy superpower. And that is an extremely important way in which we can gainsay the ongoing uncertainty when it comes to trade around the world.
Monty.
Energy superpower. So now the former chief of staff for Prime Minister Mark Carney is talking about being an energy superpower. This is what I mean. So they need to fast track infrastructure projects. That's why they passed this, so that they can fast track it, so that we can kind of be some kind of a player on the global stage, because we're nobody on the global stage right now, right? Because all of our energy is going to the US. We're not diversified in any way, like at all.
I have to get your take on the Alberta factor here, because I spent a long time in Alberta covering various premiers. My jaw kind of dropped today at the way in which Danielle Smith responded to this. I understand the logic behind it, but often the politics don't line up with things like that, right? And they haven't necessarily in the past. She was actually asking people for patience when they were questioning the idea of a pipeline not being on the list. How do you think that will play out? And were you at all surprised?
I was surprised, but, I trust Danielle Smith. She's been spending a lot of time talking to the Prime Minister. She's very aware of the 9-year legacy of being let down by Ottawa over and over and over again. She's been a fierce defender for Alberta. So when she says that, Ottawa finally gets it, that carries a lot of weight in Alberta. It tells me that, she has had enough assurances, probably both from industry and
I think what the question here is, Danielle Smith has been making a massive ruckus around an independence movement, because obviously, why should she care? You know how fucked up Canada would look if Canada became another U.S. state? Canada would be screwed. Like BC, there's like it would be a disconnected country essentially. You know what I mean? So that actually puts serious political pressure on Ottawa, on the federal government to actually make a difference, right? To actually try and do something about it. Even if Danielle Smith is a conservative premier, the Liberal federal government has to move. They have to cooperate with Danielle Smith around this. Otherwise, what actually happens if Alberta gets independence? What is Canada's natural resource, energy potential dominance look like without Alberta? It doesn't exist, right? And without Alberta, BC is disconnected. You need to kind of go through. You'd have to go through. If you're driving, you'd basically have to go through two. What's it called? Border crossings. To get to Saskatchewan, which is just like what the hell, right? So, I mean, I think this is what's actually going on, right? Oh shit.
And from the Prime Minister's office that there is a path forward. And, I take that as an extraordinarily good sign. Imagine what it would say to the country if the premiers and the Prime Minister all together agreed on a bunch of projects and suddenly they couldn't get them done. I mean, to me, that would be a very bad signal from Canada to the world. Let's hope they can all pull together and finally pull some of these things across the finish line.
Christy, you're the OG on the panel, and I can't even think of how many times you have raised the issue of sort of, catalyzing private investment and the issues that we've had in this country with that. This is obviously, to James's point, a decision to put the government at the forefront of that, pushing that. Is that a good thing inherently?
Well, it is in Canada because government has been what's been in the way of all of these projects. And for the last decade, it's been the federal government, Justin Trudeau's government, that stood very firmly in the way. So, on the question of, yes, government has a big role to play because government is ultimately the regulator, and it's government that works to fulfill obligations, ordered obligations, like, for example, Indigenous reconciliation and things like that, making sure that we are observing and meeting our environmental commitments, all those things. That's government. Government is potentially a huge problem or a huge help. And I think I would just add this point in terms of the amount of risk that the government is taking with these first 5 projects. They were really smart in choosing these 5 because they're all projects that have been, I think almost all of them, if not all of them, have been under consideration for many years. I mean, my government started building Site C. It finally got completed, and we always envisaged that there would be a transmission line from it to support LNG and natural gas. These are all projects that have been long in the cooker. So I'm going to argue that, yeah, there's some political risk in taking any of this stuff on and putting your name beside it. But my goodness, these projects have been considered and under consideration for many years. I would argue perhaps that the greatest risk to some of these projects could be within the Liberal government itself, with some of the folks that have been there for a long time.
So basically, everything that Mark Carney is doing is something that was already being planned once upon a time back in the day. No one did anything about it. Mark Carney's like, you know what, guys, we have a limited amount of time. There's going to be elections. Obviously, he's been picking at the Conservatives. We've seen the floor crossings already politically in the country. So people are moving. D'Entremont, there's another one that moved. So there's a lot of pressure on the Conservatives as well. And everybody's kind of finger pointing. But Mark Carney is moving quickly. He has to move quickly. He's aware of this. And he's just taking what already exists and he's like, fuck it, guys, let's do it. Let's just push through all of this stuff. Trump, you want us to boost our national defense budget? Let's fucking do it. Let's. But it all has to happen at the same time because these projects are going to create Canada more money. Our GDP should increase drastically. We should be in a trade surplus a couple years down the line because of all these infrastructure projects, which will allow us to actually boost our national defense budgets up to the levels that are envisioned, right? So So it's all of these political moves that the liberal that Mark Carney is pushing for. None of it is coincidence. There's a wider plan at play. These things have to happen in order for let's say that national defense spending to make sense. Otherwise, we're just going to go bankrupt. He's stopped the foreign temporary workers permits. We're putting a bit of a moratorium on that as well. Why? Because we need to stable off a bit so we can do a bunch of these things, and then let's slowly start doing things. So none of this is coincidental, right, guys? We really need to be aware of all of the little political plays that are happening, because they're all interconnected.
Time have been part of the opposition to natural gas and other big resource projects, and some of them are still there. And if I was Prime Minister Carney, that's what I'd be. I think he should keep an eye over his back shoulder while he's continuing to work on these projects, because I think it's exactly the direction we need to go in.
Well, you reference, I guess, more broadly, besides the kind of personal politics, James, one key sort of, I guess, maybe friction point, either within Liberal caucus or between the opposition and the government, and that is these energy and environmental policies, like the emissions cap, like the tanker ban, like the impact assessment law that's in place, that C5 on a project-by-project basis will be able to override, but that doesn't get rid of them completely. What is your view on the balance that the government is aiming to strike there? Is it the right one? Will it be politically palatable?
C5.
Well, C5 is one obstacle. Duty to consult more broadly is another obstacle. And also, by the way, public opinion. If we take the Prime Minister at sort of his schedule of announcements of these projects, right? 5 projects today. Most of them are already in the first quarter. There's still some delivering to be done on a lot of these projects. But if he does 5 now, 5 in November, 5 in February around the Super Bowl. He was going with the football analogies, fine. So if you imagine 15 projects by the time you get to early spring of next year, not all of those 15 projects are going to be politically really popular or easy. Some of them will hit all kinds of roadblocks. It'll be politically challenging for the government to navigate each of them individually. And if the Prime Minister personally wants to take ownership of them, some of those procurements are going to go sideways. Some of those cost structures are going to go sideways. Some of the financing will go sideways. The Aboriginal relationships could be very difficult. There'll be some local NIMBY public opinion that might be in a Liberal-held riding that may be really problematic. Christy Clark in BC, we saw that with some, public transit projects in the Lower Mainland. These are really hard. Governments are very good at launching planes into the sky and saying, look at what we've done. It's the landing of the plane that matters. And the delivering of these actual projects, that's what matters. And so, today was a good start, but I think there will be some real challenges ahead. I like the energy. I like the ambition. I like the forward lean. But I think this will be a challenging project. But I
See, he's being ambitious because he has to be ambitious. He has no political wiggle room to not be ambitious and to not make big strides. So Mark Carney took over Justin Trudeau's shit show, this basically collapsing economy of a first world nation, which is honestly insane. And now he's being forced into a situation where he needs to move quickly and decisively on major infrastructure projects in the country so that we can make more value in the country. So it's not even about like just the GDP, because nominal GDP can be inflated by the price that someone pays for it, right? So your nominal GDP, like if you're and I keep kind of like referencing Russia just because Canada and Russia are very similar in both size and scope of what the countries actually offer, right? But like, let's say Canada had an output, or let's say a housing production capacity of, I don't know, let's say 100,000 homes, and so did Russia, let's say. Okay, and I'm just doing this because of the price of goods in both countries, right? Nominally, Canada's 100,000 homes that were sold would show on a ledger at a higher value because they cost more in the country, right? And at Russia, it would be less, but you've built 100,000 homes, right? So nominal GDP doesn't really show you actual value, right? It just shows you a dollar value, right? And obviously dollar value is subject to inflation. It's subject to, scrutiny, because if you're overpaying for something, that's not the actual value, right? Also, producing homes like we've been doing doesn't actually inherently bring value to an economy, right? Because a home doesn't have long-term production value, right? Once you've built a home, that's it. Your home is just built, right? What has long-term intrinsic value to an economy is, the bricks, the cement, the wiring that actually went into building that home, and all of that. That's what actually has some kind of value. The actual home itself, that finished product, has no intrinsic value. Building a factory that produces something constantly brings value to a nation, right? And that value added bringing to a nation is what'll bring wages up. Actually, like real wages will go up. Hopefully prices stable off, and that's how you actually build a value within a nation.
I hope the country's up for it.
Yeah.
Marco, in your view, what's the key to sticking the landing?
Well, you need a good pilot, and I think the Prime Minister has demonstrated thus far that he certainly has the economic mind to steer us through some of those clouds and some of that uncertainty. But I think that the crucial component here is to execute, and by that I mean making sure that the government is working closely with industry, that is working closely with rights holders on the ground, so that we get these things built. I mean, I know, for example, there was discussion about maintaining our climate objectives. I would point out that the LNG 2 line, if it gets built, certainly we hope that it does, that it will be among the lowest emitting LNG projects around the world. But the second tranche, which is going to come out, hopefully around the Grey Cup. I know that James.
Who cares about lowering emissions of LNG? Like, no one cares about this in the world. If we actually, I have to make this a point again. If we actually continuously care about how much we're emitting, and we want to be a global player, we'll never be a global player because all of the big players, they don't give a shit about this.
Referred to it, so did the Prime Minister. It's the Grey Cup, it's the Super Bowl, and then it's the World Cup. So he's certainly hoping to make some pace there. But the second tranche, referred to something called Wind West, which is clean energy that's going to come from, we hope, Nova Scotia and the rest of the Maritimes and Atlantic provinces. So it's important not to get pigeonholed into thinking about Bill C-5 and major projects in just simply one energy category. It's about creating a portfolio of energy projects so that we can exert that energy dominance both domestically and abroad. And I think.
All right, guys, I'm gonna stop it here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that these energy projects, these infrastructure projects, have an actual chance of making it, being implemented? Do you think this is just politically motivated, or do we have like an actual grand strategy? Stay curious, stay informed. God bless Canada, guys.
This is Canada. Maple syrup in my cabin, say, kick your ass all hockey season,